Sometimes the person you miss isn't the one who stayed. It's the one who left you standing in the middle of a love you were never allowed to finish, and somehow your heart still waits for someone who already walked away. I used to think missing someone meant they mattered, that longing was proof of love, that pain meant connection, but that's not always true. Sometimes missing someone just means a wound never got the chance to close. You don't miss them because they were good for you. You miss them because they left without giving your heart an ending. You miss them because they disappeared in the middle of something you were still building, and your heart doesn't understand unfinished stories. It keeps trying to turn them into endings that never existed. Emotional abandonment doesn't always look like someone slamming a door or sending the final message. Sometimes it looks like them being physically present, but emotionally gone. It looks like dry replies, no questions, no effort, no curiosity, no tenderness, just silence wrapped in occasional affection. Just enough to keep you hoping, just enough to keep you confused. And confusion is worse than pain. Because pain eventually screams, but confusion whispers forever. When someone emotionally abandons you, they don't just leave the relationship. They leave your nervous system in survival mode. They leave your heart questioning its own worth. They leave your mind replaying moments, looking for clues, searching for where it all shifted, wondering which version of you was easier to love. You start to blame yourself. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I asked for too much. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe if I were softer, quieter, more understanding, they would have stayed. But the truth is, people don't abandon you because you are too much. They abandon you because they cannot give what you needed. But your heart doesn't understand that. Your heart doesn't speak logic. It speaks memory. It remembers the way they smiled in the beginning, the way they said your name, the way they touched you and it still felt real, the way future felt possible. You weren't abandoned by a stranger. You were abandoned by someone who once made you feel safe. And that is why it hurts differently. Because emotional abandonment doesn't just remove a person, it removes a version of you. The version that was hopeful, open, soft, believing. The version that trusted without armor. And when they left, they didn't just walk out of your life. They walked out of your sense of emotional security. So now your heart keeps calling them back, not because they were right, but because your heart wants to go back to the moment before it broke. You miss who you were when you thought they were staying. And that's the part nobody tells you. Sometimes you don't miss them. You miss the version of yourself that existed when you still believed in them. When someone emotionally abandons you, you don't grieve the person. You grieve the future you were building with them, the security you imagined, the life you started rehearsing in your head. And grief becomes complicated when there is no funeral, no goodbye, no closure, just absence where presence used to live. Just a space your heart keeps walking into, expecting to find them there. Your mind knows they're gone. Your heart keeps checking anyway. That's the damage emotional abandonment leaves behind. It programs your heart to chase absence. It teaches you that love is something that disappears. It trains your nervous system to stay alert, waiting for loss. So when they leave, you don't just lose them, you lose safety. And when safety disappears, the heart panics. Not because they were good, but because they were familiar. And familiar feels like home, even when it hurts. You start craving them like oxygen. But what you really crave is certainty, reassurance, warmth, the feeling of belonging. They just happen to be the person you first associated those feelings with. And so your heart confuses the source with the need. You don't want them. You want what you hoped they would give you. You want the emotional return that never came. You want the connection that faded without explanation. You want to feel chosen again. Because emotional abandonment does something cruel. It makes you feel unchosen long after the person is gone. You look in the mirror and wonder what they saw when they stopped loving you. You wonder how easily you were replaced. You wonder why you weren't enough to make them stay. And slowly, quietly, your self-worth begins to borrow its value from someone who couldn't love you. That's the real loss, not them, you. The part of you that used to feel worthy without permission. The part of you that didn't measure love by effort and balance. The part of you that didn't equate silence with meaning. You weren't meant to beg your way into someone's heart. You weren't meant to negotiate closeness. You weren't meant to feel grateful for crumbs. But emotional abandonment teaches you that you must earn what should have been freely given. And your heart keeps believing if you could just go back, fix something, be softer, be stronger, be quieter, be better, then maybe they would finally choose you. But here's the truth, and it will sting before it heals. People who emotionally abandon you were never equipped to love you. They didn't leave because you failed. They left because intimacy scared them. They left because consistency required emotional presence they didn't have. They left because loving you would have required showing up in ways they were not prepared to. They didn't abandon you because you mattered less. They abandoned you because you mattered too much for the walls they never tore down. And your heart wants them not because love was beautiful, but because it was unfinished. Unfinished things echo. They stay loud. They don't let you rest. Closure is rare, and silence becomes the ending you never wanted. So now you replay conversations, you reread texts, you mentally rewrite moments. You wonder if they ever think about you too. Because emotional abandonment feels unfair, and humans crave fairness. We crave explanation. We crave some form of justice in pain. But life doesn't give refunds in relationships. Sometimes people leave without meaning to destroy you. Sometimes they just weren't built to stay. And that realization hurts more than anger, because anger allows blame. Understanding forces acceptance, and acceptance forces grief. And grief says, they're not coming back as who you need. Grief says, the person you're waiting for doesn't exist anymore. Or worse, maybe never did. So why does your heart still want them? Because your heart hasn't caught up to what your mind already knows. Because your heart still thinks love is something you have to chase. Because your heart associates pain with closeness. Because you learned somewhere that being chosen feels rare. But love is not rare. Emotional safety should never feel scarce. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong person. Your heart still wants them because you attach to their potential, to who they could have been, to who they promised they might become. But potential is not love, and promises are not presence, and hope does not build a relationship. Showing up does, and they didn't. They walked away emotionally long before they did physically, and your heart never received the memo. But one day, one quiet day, you will wake up and feel something shift. The ache will still exist, but softer. The memories will still surface, but gentler. And you will realize something important. You don't want them back. You want yourself back. The version of you that didn't need to beg. The version of you that felt enough. The version of you that didn't question their worth. And when you return to that person, the hold the abandoned you once had will weaken. Not all at once, but slowly. Because healing doesn't rush. It replaces. It replaces obsession with peace. It replaces fantasy with clarity. It replaces longing with self-respect. And you will grow into someone who no longer dreams about people who couldn't hold you emotionally. You'll start craving consistency, presence, emotional safety, the things you never had. And when someone new shows up and loves you in quiet, steady ways, you might not recognize it at first, because stable love doesn't hurt. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't leave you guessing. It stays. And when you experience that, you'll finally understand. You weren't in love with being abandoned. You were starving for love, and you confused the two. But now, you're learning the difference. And that is growth. And growth doesn't feel glamorous. It feels lonely at first. It feels like letting go of the only thing you thought you knew. It feels like stepping away even when your heart still looks back. But strength isn't staying where you were hurt. Strength is leaving when nothing changes. Your heart doesn't miss them. Your heart misses safety. It misses warmth. It misses being held emotionally. And one day you will find that again. Not in someone who left, but in someone who stays. And maybe, just maybe, that someone is you first. If you and I are anything alike, and you want to keep walking this path with me, then subscribe.